Pieces of clay must be attached to each other using a very specific process. This process is called slipping and scoring. Every time you attach a piece of clay to another piece of clay, you must slip and score. This applies to any type of clay that you are building with, from slab to coil to hand-modeled pieces. This also applies to any size of clay that you are building with, from the biggest slab to the tiniest hand-molded detail. If you do not attach clay to clay by slipping and scoring, the separate pieces of clay will not stay together through the bisque fire. This can be tricky to understand, as the clay will stick together when it is in the greenware or plastic, soft and flexible state. It will even stay together as the clay dries. But it is very important to know that the clay that was attached on will not stay together through the bisque fire in the kiln. Again, it is crucial that every time you attach clay to clay, you must slip and score. We'll need several ceramic tools to get started. You will need a clay knife or other sharp tool that will make small cuts in the clay. The other tool needed is a sculpture pedestal to raise your work and to allow it to spin for ease in building. In terms of clay, you will need all of the pieces of pre-wedged and formed clay that you've created to begin building with. In this case, that is coils and a slab base. You will also need slip. Slip is mud-like clay that acts as the glue that holds two pieces of clay together. It is the exact same type of clay as what we've been working with, only broken down by water. Begin by putting the sharp end of the knife face down. Use the tip of the knife to cut small slits along the length of the clay that is having a separate piece of clay attached onto it. This process is called scoring. The slits you create with the knife need to be grouped very close together. Spreading them far apart will not be effective in attaching the two separate pieces of clay together. Do not space the slits far apart. Sure the slits you create are grouped very close together. These slits must cover the entire surface of the clay that will have another piece of clay attached onto it. In this example, the slits, or score marks, need to be on all four sides of the slab base. These score marks not only have to be grouped close together, they also have to be deep enough that when you run your finger across the surface of the clay, you can feel the texture the marks create. If you cannot feel that texture, cut the score marks with a little more pressure. Be careful not to press too hard though, as you don't want to deform the shape of the clay you are working with. The direction of the score marks does not matter, and overlapping your marks is okay, but not necessary. You will also need to score the clay that is going to be attached onto the first scored clay. In this example, that is the coils that will be used to build the form with. Repeat the scoring process for this clay. Use your knife, blade down, to cut small slits, called score marks, or scoring, along the entire length of this clay as well. Group your score marks close together and cut them deep enough to feel the texture with your fingers without deforming the clay. Creating score marks on both the clay that you're attaching, as well as the clay that is having another piece of clay attached onto it, makes a texture. This texture can be compared to the texture of Velcro. Velcro has texture on both pieces, the top and the bottom. When these textures grip each other, they create a strong bond. The same goes for clay. Texture meets texture and creates a strong bond. The next step is to add slip, or the mud-like clay that is used like glue. You want to be sure to use the slip that is roughly the consistency of toothpaste. Do not use any water that may be sitting on the surface of the container of slip. Use only the mud-like clay slip instead. A little bit of slip goes a long way. You do not need to add a lot. A thin coating works best. If you use too much slip, the water in the slip will break down the clay it sits on and turn it into mud. Make sure you only use a small amount. Add slip to both pieces of clay that you have scored, the clay that is being attached, and the clay that will have more clay attached onto it. Again, a little bit goes a long way. Use a thin coat. Now it is time to attach the separate clay pieces together. Scored side meets scored side. As you're attaching the pieces of clay together, gently press down on the clay, lightly compressing the clay together to reinforce the score mark bond. Attach the clay by gently pressing it together all the way around the pieces being attached. As the clay is very plastic, or soft and flexible, it should bend at corners or around curves with no cracking or breaking. Pinch off any excess clay where the two pieces of attached clay meet. Watch the entire process again from a closer view. Use a knife to cut small slits or score marks on the clay that will have another piece of clay attached onto it. Group the marks close together over the whole length. Make sure the score marks are deep enough that you can feel the texture when you run your finger over it. Score the clay that will be attached onto the first piece in the same manner. Add a thin layer of slip to both pieces of clay. Do not use too much. A little bit goes a long way. Attach the two pieces of clay together where scored side meets scored side, texture meets texture. Gently press down as you attach the two pieces together to reinforce the bond. Complete this process until your clay is firmly attached on by slipping and scoring.